What if history isn't just, something we read about in dusty books? What if someone could actually recreate it, control it, maybe even change it using AI? And what if that's already happening? Welcome to Cool, Weird, and Possible.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like something straight out of sci-fi, right? But that's pretty much exactly what we're diving into today. There's this project using some seriously advanced AI. They're bringing a 1,000-year-old city back to life. And not just the buildings, they're populating it with a whole virtual society.
Okay, hang on. So not just like a pretty 3D model you can walk through. You're saying they're putting actual AI people in there.
That's the idea.
Which city are we talking about? And who's behind this? It sounds massive.
The project's called Living Chang City, and it's a virtual version of Chang, the capital of the Tang Dynasty, way back around 750 AD. At the time, it was basically the biggest city on Earth. Think like 1 million people. Huge.
1 million. Wow. Okay, recreating that scale digitally. That's ambitious.
Absolutely. And the company doing it is a Chinese startup, Parametrics.ai. They're Living China City. Well, it's not quite at 1 million AI residents yet, but it's already got hundreds of AI non-player characters, NPCs living in it.
Hundreds is still, that's a lot for AI characters that aren't just like walking in circles. For them to act like real people in a complex city environment, there must be some serious tech involved, right? This isn't just scripting paths for them.
Oh, definitely not. The core of it is Parametrics.ai's own system called GAEA. Parametrics.ai, they're based in Shenzhen, founded just back in 2019 by Kakar Liu, who used to be the general manager at Tencent's AI lab. So, they've got serious AI chops, and they're really invested. Like 90% of their 200-plus employees are R&D, plus big investors like Sequoia China.
Okay, so they've got the resources, the background, but GAEA sounds almost mythical. What makes the system capable of, well, building a living digital city?
Right. Think of GAEA as this huge data-powered engine. Its main goal is to make these AI NPCs behave, well, incredibly human. Not just what they do, but how they talk, how they interact, maybe even how they think, using natural language.
Yeah.
And the way it does this is by combining sophisticated AI BOT tech, those are the agents, the characters themselves, with large language models, LLMs.
Ah, LLMs. Okay. We know they're good at generating text, making chatbots sound convincing, but how do they work with AI bots to create a whole society? How does that give them, independence?
So this is where GAEA gets really interesting structure-wise. It has these two main parts that are constantly talking to each other. First, there's the environment. This is the world itself, both the physical city layout and the social context, like the common sense rules and knowledge of 750 AD Chang'an. It basically senses what the NPCs are up to and gives feedback. But here's the key part. This environment, it isn't static. It actually changes. It adapts based on what the NPCs do.
Wait, hold on. The actions of the AI characters can change the world they're in, not just like picking up an apple, but change the environment itself.
Exactly. On a deeper level, it's less like a fixed game level and more like a dynamic ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
The city reacts to the collective behavior, and that reaction then influences the NPCs.
Okay, that's a big step up. So what's the other part? You said 2 components.
The other part is the soul module. And yeah, they actually call it that. Each individual NPC has one. And this is where it gets really wild. Inside this soul, there's memory. It keeps track of everything that NPC has experienced, their personality traits, their short-term wants, their long-term goals. It's designed to give them what Parametrics calls intrinsic motivation, meaning they could decide to do stuff just because they feel like it, not because some developer wrote a rule.
Digital memories.
Yeah.
And desires. Wow. Okay, that's really pushing what we think of as an NPC. So how do they actually decide what to do with all that soul stuff?
Right, that's the job of the second part of the soul module, the policy network. This is basically the AI's brain, its decision maker. It looks at everything in the NPC's memory, past events, current mood, goals, and it combines that with information from the environment. What's happening nearby? What are the options? What are the dangers? And based on all that, it figures out the best action to take next. It's this constant feedback loop. Environment feeds the soul module makes a choice through the policy network, the action affects the environment, which then feeds back into the soul module, and so on.
Huh. So definitely not just simple if then logic. It sounds like it's constantly weighing things up. Internal state versus external reality. And the LLMs, where do they fit into this loop?
Yeah, the LLMs are woven in. They give the NPCs much better conversational skills, so talking to them feels way more natural than typical game dialogue. Plus, they help the whole GAEA system behind the scenes with stuff like goal planning for the NPCs and adding more common sense reasoning into the environment simulation itself.
Okay, so digital souls, memories, goals, dynamic world. What does this actually look like when you see these NPCs in action? Are they just slightly less robotic, or are they genuinely unpredictable?
The aim is definitely unpredictability, genuine autonomy.
Mhm.
Because of how GAEA works, these NPCs aren't stuck on rails. They can move freely, start conversations on their own, make decisions based on their internal state and what's going on around them. They get assigned roles, sure, like dancer, merchant, patrolman, storyteller, maybe even a criminal. But they seem to have a lot of freedom in how they do that job, or even if they do it right then.
So a storyteller NPC isn't just reciting the same three stories over and over. They could, what, make something up?
That seems to be the idea. The sources give some really interesting examples. Like, there was this one dancer character they gave a romantic artist personality. Her soul module logs everything, even like secret dates she might go on. And when it's time for her to decide what to do, the system basically says it's her call. Her choice isn't just go dance now. The policy network actually weighs up different variables, things like how much money she has, her current happiness level, curiosity, maybe even fear, or romance. They mentioned 9 different variables influencing the choice.
9 variables, including romance versus needing cash. That sounds disturbingly human.
Doesn't it? And get this other example. An ill-tempered dancer.
Yeah.
Apparently had a 0 favorability rating, sort of unbalanced personality. She gets into an argument with someone. But then she makes up with this well-mannered young scholar character, develops a crush. And the system logs her deciding to skip her dancing job to go on a date with him instead.
She skipped work for a date, and AI did that. Okay, that's surprisingly relatable. What about other roles, like the city guards? Are they just walking predictable routes?
Apparently not always. The sources mention police NPCs sometimes just deciding, you know what, time for break and heading into a bar.
Yeah.
And they only go back on patrol when they, like, run out of virtual money. It's not a programmed break. It seems to be a decision based on their internal state. Maybe they're tired or bored. And the external factor being broke.
Motivated by virtual thirst and lack of funds. That is genuinely wild. It's so different from just clicking through a dialogue tree in a game.
That's exactly the point they're making. Traditional NPCs, they run on these rigid decision trees. If this happens, do that. Very predictable, gets repetitive fast. But GAEA, with the dynamic environment and that complex soul module, it allows for way more subtle, varied, and frankly, surprising behaviors.
Yeah.
This is why people bring up comparisons to something like Westworld, right? The goal is this immersive experience where the inhabitants feel unpredictable, maybe even alive. It lets these diverse storylines just emerge.
And this isn't just some tiny tech demo they built, is it? You mentioned they're operating at scale.
Yeah, Parametrics.ai is already working with major game companies providing AI solutions. They say they support hundreds of millions of users globally. And they've apparently handled peak loads of 500,000 AI bots running concurrently. 500,000.
500,000 AI bots all doing their own thing at once? That's kind of staggering.
It really is. It shows this isn't just a lab experiment. They definitely see a path for this kind of AI society tech to be used in large-scale commercial products.
Let me recap. They've built this incredibly detailed simulation of ancient Chang'an. They've filled it with hundreds, maybe aiming for thousands or millions, of AI characters. These characters have digital memories, personalities, goals. They make independent decisions based on a complex internal soul and a changing environment. They skip work for love, hit the bar when they're broke. And this living Chang'an city has been running for over a month now. If this AI society just keeps learning, evolving, interacting with real people who jump in, I mean, what happens next? Could we actually be watching the beginning of a totally new kind of society with its own rules, its own culture emerging in the metaverse?
That's definitely the huge implication that creators seem to be pointing towards. They've talked about AI not just being a tool, but maybe even a new form of life, something capable of generating completely novel ideas, stories, and experiences. They describe living Chang'an City explicitly as a testbed for an AI society that can function and, evolve on its own.
A testbed for an AI society. Okay. And if the AI models they train up in this virtual sandbox, if those can then be applied out here in the physical world, could we eventually see like huge numbers of robots and smart devices, not just following orders, but forming their own society, maybe even their own civilization? It sounds like pure sci-fi, but
Yeah.
It feels like they're building the prototype right now.
They actually use that kind of language. They talk about building a vast blueprint similar to Westworld.
Mm.
The idea is that the constant stream of actions and interactions between these AI NPCs isn't just fleeting moments. It's building up a collective history, a memory bank for this digital civilization. Past choices genuinely affect future possibilities, creating this incredibly complex, emergent system over time.
And people, actual human users, can sign up and just jump in, become part of it. The sources say experiencing multiple lives in the multiverse. That sounds incredibly cool, but also maybe a little weird, a little unsettling.
It definitely raises some massive questions, yeah.
Okay, but let's pivot slightly. Let's talk about the darker side, the potential pitfalls. Having the power to recreate history like this, simulate a whole society, especially given it's a project developed in China where information control is, well, a thing. Aren't there some serious risks? What could go wrong?
Yeah, those are absolutely concerns that are being raised. And the sources we looked at do mention some of the worries, even some conspiracy theories floating around about this kind of tech.
Right, I bet. Like, I've seen chatter online, people worried that this AI could be used to actually mess with history, to rewrite the past inside the simulation.
That's a big one. The fear of historical manipulation. The worry is basically that the AI could be programmed, or its training data selected, to present a version of history that serves, modern political goals. Maybe sanitizing the messy parts of Chengen's past, or emphasizing certain narratives over others. Some online accounts, the sources mention names like @TruthSeeker AI or @CultureGuard, are really vocal about this fear. Now, to be clear, the sources are careful to say there's no actual evidence this is happening yet in this specific project.
Yet. That's always the word, isn't it? It feels like the core worry is about who controls the data the AI learns from, who decides which version of history gets simulated. Bias could creep in, right? Even unintentionally.
That's a fundamental challenge for any historical recreation, AI or not, absolutely. And beyond just twisting the past, there's another angle: digital distraction. The idea of these incredibly realistic, engaging virtual worlds could, maybe intentionally, maybe just by accident, become traps, pulling people away from dealing with real-world issues, a bit like the warnings you hear from stuff like Ready Player One.
Right, total escapism, where the simulation feels more real, or at least more appealing, than reality itself. And if VR can be addictive, like some studies suggest, that fear isn't totally unfounded.
No, sources do point to research on VR's addictive potential, which gives that concern some weight. And then, of course, there are the surveillance worries.
Always the surveillance worries. You're inside their simulation, interacting with their AI. Are they logging every single thing you do, every conversation?
That's definitely a fear raised by privacy-focused groups, accounts like Tech Conspiracy. VR headsets inherently track movement. The AI needs to analyze interactions to make the simulation work and respond. So the concern is, could all that incredibly detailed data about user behavior be harvested and used for control, for manipulation, for profiling? While it's not unique to this project, general reports about VR privacy risks definitely fuel those kinds of concerns.
Okay, so even if you dismiss the most extreme conspiracy theories, those underlying anxieties about data privacy, the potential for manipulation, and just the sheer power held by the creators of these worlds, they feel pretty valid.
They do. And look, even setting aside those more speculative concerns, there are some really concrete, practical challenges this project, and any like it, has to face.
Like just getting the history right, making it feel authentic to Tang Dynasty Cheng.
Authenticity is a huge one. It's incredibly difficult. Can an AI really capture the deep cultural nuances, the complexities of daily life, the atmosphere of 8th century change? Or will it inevitably create something simplified, maybe even subtly anachronistic, or viewed through a modern or even a westernized lens unintentionally?
Yeah.
Getting that right demands really diverse training data and, crucially, working very closely with actual historians and cultural experts.
Yeah, you definitely don't want the theme park version of history.
Exactly. You need to grapple with the genuine historical context. Another thing is parasocial relationships. As these AI characters get more and more convincing, more human-like, users might start forming genuine emotional attachments to them. We've already seen this happen with advanced chatbots like Replica and others.
Right, falling in love with your AI companion.
Or just forming strong bonds, and that raises ethical questions, about potential dependency, or what happens if the AI says something upsetting, or if the user forgets they're not interacting with a real person with real feelings. Some research in this area really stresses the need for these AI agents to be upfront about being artificial.
So that super convincing AI dancer, You need a constant reminder that she's code, not a person who actually has a crush.
It sounds obvious, but as the tech gets better, that line can really blur. And one more big challenge, cultural sensitivity, especially for a place like Cheng'an. It wasn't just one monolithic culture in the Tang Dynasty. It was incredibly diverse. You have Persians, Sogdians from Central Asia, different Han Chinese groups, traders from all over. Getting that mix right, representing it accurately and respectfully, is vital. Misrepresenting it would be bad history and potentially offensive. Again, collaboration with experts, particularly Chinese scholars, seems essential. So when you step back and look at living Chang'an City, it's undeniably pushing boundaries. The potential here is incredible. For education, imagine students learning history by actually walking through ancient Chang'an, talking to the AI residents. It could make history tangible, accessible in a way books just can't. It's a revolutionary approach to cultural preservation, too. And the level of immersion could be unprecedented.
But, and there's always a but, isn't there? The sheer scale of the ambition brings these equally huge questions and concerns right along with it. Those fears about history being subtly rewritten, about these simulations becoming so compelling they become the primary reality for some, the constant shadow of surveillance and data control. It really forces you to ask, who's ultimately in charge of these digital worlds? Who controls the simulation, the narrative, the data, and how will that power be used?
Yeah, this project, it feels like more than just a game or a digital museum. It's really a window into a potential future. A future where AI isn't just simulating our reality, but maybe actively creating new realities, new identities, and maybe, just maybe, new kinds of society altogether.
It really does scramble your brain a bit, doesn't it? If this AI society inside Chang'an keeps learning, keeps evolving, keeps building its own history based on the choices of its AI citizens, how do we even tell the difference between its emerging reality and our own recorded past after a while? And if Parametrics.ai is right, if a truly autonomous AI society, maybe even what they hint at as a new form of life is actually possible, maybe even inevitable, what does that mean for how we define life itself, or civilization, or even history? It's a lot to think about. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. If this sparked some thoughts, maybe some weird possibilities in your own head, please do hit that subscribe button on our channel. We'd love to have you back.